Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to Class 5 of our Bodhi Buddhism Calm and Insight Study and Meditation course. And I see we've got a few people online already. Good morning, Margot, and happy Vesak Day to you too. Maybe we've got a few other people that are online. If you're online, please just drop us a little message down in the little message panel there on Facebook. It's always nice to see who we've got online. Now, I noticed Margot says Happy Vesak. I don't know if anyone else saw it, but on the morning of Thursday, which was the 7th, I put up another video, just a little 20-minute video about Vesak Day, just talking about what that means in Buddhism. If you're interested, it should be on the video page for the Bodhi Tree community here. It's just 20 minutes, it's not too long. Mainly just talking a little bit about what Vesak is in different places, and also doing a couple of readings. I did 3 readings from some very old classic translations and original works of Buddhism in English. I see we've also got Terry online. Nice to see you, Terry. And Nathaniel and Mika. Okay, starting to look like the usual team. Good to see you all. I see on my little Facebook live feed, at least, we've got a few more people that are watching. Maybe there's a few stalkers out there, a few lurkers. That's fine. I don't mind that at all. You're more than welcome to just watch. You don't have to write a comment. But if you'd like to, feel free to drop in a comment there. Okay, now just thinking about the meditation today and the content that we're covering. So as you all know, we have been using a very classic Chinese Buddhist text that I kind of call it like a meditation manual, commonly known as Xiao Zi Guan. The translation that we're using from Venerable Dharma Mitra Heng So is available there, so if you haven't got the file and downloaded it yet, please just click through and get yourself a copy. It's the same chapter as last week. Okay, it's the same chapter as last week, because that's broken up into 5 adjustments. So there was the food, sleep, body, breath, and mind. And so we did the first 3 last week. We did food, sleep, and body, and then today we're just going to focus on the breath. We're going to give a bit more time to that. So it's the same file. But if you've got a copy, in a moment we'll read along together. Okay, I see we've also got Tina online. We've got Kunjing coming in from the other side of the Pacific. Oh, we've got Priscilla. Nice to see you, Priscilla. Hope you're doing well. Hope everything's good down there in Australia. And we've also got Mei Fang. Nice to see you too. So we've got a few more people joining us. It's good to see. Now, as I was saying about our text, because I also, as I've mentioned earlier, as I also have an undergrad class at National Taiwan University, there is a visiting professor at the moment. We're also focusing on the whole course there is called Chan and Yoga, or Dhyana and Yoga, Chan Xiu Yu Yu Jia. And we've gone through a bunch of different texts, but it just so happens that this week, and we'll be continuing next week, we are looking at Xiao Zi Guan. We're looking at the same text on Calm and Insight. So just like a couple of days ago, spent 3 hours of looking through some of these very same chapters with the undergraduate students. And so I feel kind of like my mind is getting a nice, good dose of this classic Calm and Insight, Shamatha Vipassana teachings from this particular text. Now, another thing that came up during this week was just recently, this is also on Facebook as well, actually, an old classmate and Dharma brother of mine just recently put up a photo of a 7-day meditation retreat from many years ago. I think it was back in 2002 in South Africa, led by Venerable Hui Zhi. So this was when Venerable Hui Zhi was in South Africa, and he was leading. We did a lot of meditation retreats at that time. For the public, we had 2 7-day or 10-day retreats a year, and then also at the African Buddhist Seminary there, we had another 2 7-day retreats as well. And so it was nice to see a group of some of my old classmates and old friends there from South Africa, all making some comments on something which is now, wow, it was quite a few years ago, it was like 18 years ago. Okay, now that's probably given enough time for a few more people to come online there. I see the numbers are starting to kick up. So let's maybe start to jump on into our text for today. So I hope you're comfy there, you've got some water, you've got your cushion. I'm now going to flip over and pop up the text. Okay. Now, as you know, as I just mentioned, we're still continuing on with chapter 4, making adjustments. Now, we've already gone through some of this material. I'll just do a very, very super fast review of what we did last week. So just talking about making adjustments, we've got 5 of them in total. The first bit at the beginning is not really much about making adjustments at all. It's kind of more of a transition from the earlier material and talking about like making vows and really making a commitment to practice. Then it goes into adjustments in food, and the basic idea here is middle way, right? The middle way. Don't eat too much and don't eat too little. And you can kind of see this if you've got a little bit, even a little bit of meditation experience. You'll know if you've got a really full tummy and you try to sit down and meditate, often it's not good. Not only will you sit uncomfortably physically, but also the mental state. You get very sleepy, kind of drowsy. But if you try to do the reverse and you think like, well then, I'll be like some hardcore yogi aesthetic and then I won't eat at all, well, without proper training, then the body gets really low on energy and it's also very hard to concentrate. That's kind of a bit like also the classic story of the Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree, right? We've been practicing these ascetic practices for many, many years, including a lot of basic starvation when it comes down to it. The story of the like one grain of hemp or 1 grain of rice a day to kind of nourish his body. No energy, so he can't concentrate. It's only later when he takes a bit of food, a reasonable, small but healthy amount of food, that he has enough energy to concentrate. The second point of adjustment was adjustments in sleep, and this is, again, we need to find a middle way. If we think like, oh, I'm like a hardcore meditator, I don't need to sleep, I will just meditate, because somewhere we read something that says like, half an hour of meditation is the same as 2 hours of sleep, and we think then, oh, then I don't need to sleep at all. I used to sleep 8 hours a day, I'll just meditate for 2 hours. Well, you can give it a try. To be honest, it probably won't work. It kind of works if that meditation is like super high quality, like you're really actually getting into some kind of dhyana or samadhi state. But regular, just kind of slight concentration, it won't bring about the same effect. And even if we look at classic descriptions of the Buddha's daily lifestyle, the Buddha still slept. It wasn't that he just meditated for a few hours a night and that was it. And of course the flip side is true as well. If we oversleep, it can make the mind very dull and drowsy. So we need to kind of balance between getting enough sleep and also those other times of the day when we're active. Then we got into adjustments for the body, and it kind of breaks it up into a couple of points here. The first one is adjusting the body when we sit in meditation. It's at the start of meditation session. And we talked about the meditation posture, and while what you'll see almost everywhere in almost all Mahayana traditions, be they East Asian, so Chinese Chan, Japanese Zen, or Tibetan, Himalayan, Central Asian traditions, is the use of the Vairochana 7-point posture. Okay, the Vairochana 7-point posture. And in this posture, it goes through from the position of your legs up to your hips and waist, your hands, your chest, your head and neck upright and straight, your mouth, tongue on the palate, and then the position of the eyes. So this is really classic 7-point meditation posture. But we will find in this text it doesn't quite enumerate it in like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it doesn't use that term. But the actual content is pretty much exactly the same. It does give some other comments though, which are relevant as well, which is not just the sitting posture, but it's also some other things as well. It says like you don't want your clothes too tight. I think it mentions something like sort of loosen your belt, but don't let your pants fall off. And the same with like your upper shirt. Now, I can't see any of you people out there in Facebook land. I can't see any of you. I do not know what you are wearing, but I'm going to guess that there's probably one of you out there sitting there in your pair of jeans. Okay, so who is it? I don't know. But just a reminder, before you join the sessions, do try to wear some loose pants. In particular, like loose around the knees, because when you bend your knees, like that can cause some constriction, discomfort, blood flows a bit less, and also around your waist as well. So just kind of keep a note on that kind of looseness of your clothing is always like important, and likewise throughout the top as well. One thing to watch in particular, I think, is you don't want like really tight high collars. You want to be able to, well, at least for myself, I want to feel like I can kind of, my throat and my neck is like comfortable. And then the other point, which of course classic text will almost never mention, is things like watches, glasses. Of course, definitely don't like have your cell phone or your keys in your pocket or anything like that. Now, when I'm teaching classicals, I keep my glasses on, but I just need that so I can control all these little tech things that we can actually run the class. Okay, so apart from that, just a reminder. So I think the text does quite a nice job of talking about those things. Okay, back to the text here. That's entering and staying in meditation, and the text also does mention some basic points about at the end of the meditation session. So we do some basic, we go from an active state into a sitting state. We sit and we want to get the posture right and adjust ourselves into it. And likewise at the end of the meditation session, where we're going from a very calm physical state and then slowly going back to an active state. So just doing some slow stretches like side to side, forward and back, roll your shoulders, stretch your neck, move your fingers and toes, massaging through the key body parts, and then maybe like moving the legs in particular, moving the knees and ankles, making sure that the blood flow is quite good. So those are just some little reminders about adjusting the breath. And as the text itself says, you kind of can't just separate these things out. One thing is just, the breath and breathing is a function of the body. We can't say adjusting the body and adjusting the breath are two things. How you sit and your posture will definitely affect your breathing. And both of these in turn, and the quality of the breath, for example, will definitely affect your state of mind. Long breathing, short breathing, fast breathing, slow breathing, and all these things will have an effect upon our mental state. And that's what we're going to get into right now. Okay, so where are we for the breath? Okay, so it's on page 7 of the PDF file. B, adjustments in breath when entering meditation. So the first thing it mentions is just when you first sit down and doing a couple of breaths or a couple of little techniques at the start. So I'm just going to read this bit here. Fourth, the technique for making adjustments in the breath when first entering dhyana meditation. I'm sorry, I think I've gone a bit too far, have I? Just see, where is it? My apologies. Oh, now I can't find the bit I'm looking for. Anyway, sorry about that. I don't want to like flip wildly backwards and forwards in the PDF file. I'll just tell it to you straight. So there are some basic techniques once you're sitting, is to take a couple of kind of deep breaths. Now the text itself describes it as sort of you breathe in through the nostrils fairly deeply, nice and slow, but nice deep full breath, and then out through the mouth. And it says you're like expunging out the stale air. is kind of the usual description. Now this is one way of doing it, and this is probably the only time that you'll see the use of the mouth for breathing. It's just when you first sit down. It's not when you're breathing during the meditation, it's just when you first sit down. So in through the nostrils and out through the mouth. That's one technique. There are some other different techniques. When I first learned meditation, and the way I was taught was alternate nasal breathing. So breathing in through the right nostril. So you block the left nostril with one finger, and then you block the right nostril with your thumb, and then out through the left nostril. And then you alternate in through the left nostril, hold, and out through the right nostril. Okay, that probably makes my voice sound really weird, but anyway, and you can do that a few times. And again, the text says, however, if once you sit down, your breath is already like fairly well regulated, you can just do it once. So it's just like a very starter, okay, just adjust and correct the breath. Then it goes on to a very important idea of the 4 types of breathing. So let's have a little look at that, shall we? Okay. So here we go. Fourth, the technique for making adjustments in breath when first entering dhyana meditation. The breath may possess any of 4 characteristics. So this kind of really means like there are 4 kinds of breathing, and each kind has got its own sort of distinct characteristics. The first one is called windy breathing. The second one is uneven breathing. The third one is normal breathing. And the fourth one is subtle respiration. The first 3 are indications of inadequate adjustment, whereas the last one is characteristic of correct adjustment. So there's 4 types, and as we're going to see, we'll go through the descriptions in turn. But these 4 times are basically from the most coarse, rough, most unsuitable for meditation, right down to the last one, which is kind of very fine, very smooth and subtle, and only that last one is really suitable for inducing the state of dhyana within the mind. Okay, so you've got 4 of them, and really only one of them that we're looking for. Okay. Now the translations are kind of, they may look a bit interesting, like let's this first one. What does it mean by windy breathing? This is just simply because in Chinese it's called feng, which just means wind. So this is like, oh, it's kind of like the wind is blowing sort of thing. When one is sitting and one senses the presence of a sound as the breath comes into and goes forth from the nose, this is windy breathing. So it's very loud and it's very rough. Now, the text does often use this idea of whether or not the breath makes any sound as an indicator of the quality of the breath. Basically, the more sound, the coarser and the least suitable, and the less sound, the more subtle and the more suitable. That's kind of the basic kind of principle here. Though I will note, I'll just add a comment of my own here, that sometimes the sound, yes, is the quality of the breath, but it can just simply be like if you've got a bit of mucus inside your nasal passage, it will cause sound or some kind of blockage. And some people even just it's just literally the structure of these kind of bones and these passages in our sinuses will bring about that sound. Now, okay, maybe I should get into that in a second. Let me just go through these first, and I'll come back and talk about some other little details not mentioned in the text. The next one is called uneven breathing. So in Chinese it's chuan. So how is this described? When one is sitting, and even though the breath makes no sound, there is still a catching and halting such that it does not move on through. This is uneven breathing. Now, the name of this in Chinese is chuan. And in Mandarin, like modern Chinese, that the term chuan, like if you say chuan qi, it's like when you're panting. It's kind of actually used more like the first one, the one you're making a sound, you're that kind of breathing. But here it says no sound, but it's still catching and halting, and it's not even. So it's not this kind of nice even flow of the breath, kind of stopping, starting, okay. Now both of these are quite rough and rougher than usual. I sometimes wonder if, like, my own kind of description would be this first breathing is more like that kind of panting, gasping breathing. If you've been exercising, for example, you're trying to bring in more breath. And often, of course, when you exercise, we will stop breathing through the nostrils and start breathing out the mouth, simply to draw more oxygen into the body because the body needs it. That is not suitable. Not suitable for meditation. And this next one, then, uneven breathing, is slightly nicer, but it's pretty rough. Okay. Now the third one is probably the kind of breath that we're doing right now. Probably. So what is meant by ordinary breathing? So this in Chinese is qi, and I'll talk about that word in a moment. When one is sitting, even though the breath makes no sound and there is no catching and stopping, still it is not subtle. This is ordinary breathing. Okay, so this is kind of what we might call just usual resting level breathing, resting level respiration. Kind of like the idea we have like resting level pulse rate, for example. You haven't been exercising or moving, but you're not in like some super calm state either. It's just regular sitting there reading a book, or I was going to say watching TV or reading a book. Depends on what content you're reading or what content is on TV. Your breath could be all sorts of different things. Okay, now the term for this third one is qi, and for those of you that, even if you don't know Chinese, but you know just even a little bit about East Asian thought, so this idea of qi it gets used in many other different ways. So for example, one simple example would be Reiki. I'm sure many of you have heard of Reiki. Reiki is Japanese pronunciation. In Chinese it's Ling Qi. So this qi in Chinese is the same as ki in Reiki in Japanese. So how's this meant? So Reiki, for example, that's got its own whole system. But often when people talk about this, they don't translate it as breath. The ki, or the qi, often gets translated as something like energy. When I was a much younger, when I was like a high school kid, I started to learn karate. And in karate, we kind of were taught that you have this ki, you do this like kia, which is kind of like this shout. And we were taught to like breathe down deep and low in the diaphragm. And that if you were going to say you're going to like break some boards, as karate clubs like to do, right? You teach the kids to set up the wooden boards, and then you kick the board or you punch the board, and you do this kia when you do it, and you focus your energy down low and you blast it out. And that's also then connecting this kind of idea of that your breath, and particularly low down within the body, has this kind of energy as well. And so I think the use of the term qi, we get this idea of its kind of energy, and energy connected with the breath. Okay. Now there's lots of other examples I can give about this as well. But here it's just used in a far more kind of ordinary sense. And just even in modern day Chinese, qi, if you say qi hou or tian qi is just the weather. Qi ti is just air, like a gas. So in general, qi can then just mean kind of gas in general. But also it can mean just very simply the breath. Though it is interesting, just if you want to talk about the breath or breathing in modern day Chinese and Putonghua, you don't use the word qi at all. There's other words for it. So, talking about all these ideas, what I want to emphasize is that the term that's used here is qi, and the word qi, the single character qi, like a lot of Chinese words, has a huge range of different meanings. And so it can touch on these kind of ideas as like breath as energy, but here it really is just kind of simple breathing. When we talk about qi as energy, in many ways it's a lot like in Sanskrit, the idea of prana. So prana is also basically just the breath, or it is specifically the exhalation of the breath. Now, prana, the reverse is ana, which is inhalation. But then it also later on gets this kind of far broader meaning, as prana is, often gets translated as this universal energy that pervades all things. Okay, so let's not confuse these here. Let's not confuse these here. That's my main point that I want to talk about. The first one, or the third type of breath, is just ordinary breathing. But then we have the fourth kind of breath. Now this in Chinese is xi, and xi is, in modern Chinese, it's probably just one of the common terms for breathing. Okay, so you got to be a bit careful about this, the difference between classical uses of terms. I mean, our text is like about 1500 years old, and modern uses of characters. This is why when you're looking at translations of these classic terms, it really does help if you get translations by people who know those differences. Venerable Heng So, who translated this, obviously knows these points. So this one here, he's translating as subtle respiration. And note he's also not using the term breathing, he's using the term respiration. So again, it kind of gives it a bit of a different angle. How is it described? There is no sound, no catching, no coarseness. The exhalation and inhalation of the breath are smooth and of extended duration. Now this is another important point. Such that they are as if still there and yet as if they have disappeared. So I think in Chinese, if I remember that last phrase, because that last phrase is a little bit kind of, what does that mean? It's like it's there, but it's disappeared. 若存若亡. So it kind of means that the breath is very subtle, and that if we were just in a regular kind of coarse state of mind, if we were just in a very coarse state of mind, you might not pick up on that kind of breathing. And this is where we start to see then the relationship between the breath and the mind. When we make the breath fine and subtle, on one side that will induce a calmer state of mind, but at the same time it also means the mind we need to have a calmer state of mind in order to see that more subtle kind of a breath. And so if the mind stays coarse and rough and distracted, you won't be able to see that breath, and you probably won't even be able to bring about that kind of breathing. Or if you can bring about that kind of breathing, you can only do it in a kind of a forced way. It's not a natural way. You kind of have to like force it, and you won't be able to sustain it. You won't be able to sustain it for any length of time. Whereas if the breath is brought into this calmer, subtle respiration, at the same time that the mind is brought into a calmer and more subtle state, you'll be able to notice it, and you'll be able to see in really like micro detail the quality of the breath. And so I think that's what's really being mentioned here, where it says like, as if still there and yet as if it's disappeared. Like it's very subtle. If you're not paying attention, you'll kind of miss it. It's like you can't find the breath. But it is there, you definitely are breathing. And there are a couple of reasons for that, and that is, as mentioned here, smooth and of extended duration. So it's very smooth, it's very even, right? The other types of breath are surprisingly not even. I think, usually when I teach meditation on retreats and stuff, I often make this kind of point that hands up, who knows how to breathe? Anyone breathing here? And everyone's like, what? Of course I'm breathing. What do you think we are? A bunch of zombies? And then I asked another question, says, who here has learned how to breathe? Who here is trained how to breathe? And then I'll usually see like about probably at least 50% and probably 75% of the hands will go down. It's kind of interesting, it's one of these things that's like, even walking. When we're little babies, we do learn how to walk. Parents will teach us how to walk, and they'll take photos or videos of us. Oh, he's walking for the first time. but not for breathing. Of course, we breathe, straight after birth. Everyone's so exhausted. They're not thinking like, get his first breath. What? She's breathing. Quick, take a photo. But we just think that it's something that we naturally do. But to be honest, a lot of people have bad breathing habits, quite bad breathing habits, and that can bring about even long-term effects upon one's physical health and also upon one's mental and emotional health. So we don't learn, we don't train how to do that. And so when we do train and we do pay attention to the breath, we'll actually realize that our normal breathing, even this third type of breathing, remember this ordinary breathing here, is not as even as we think. We just think breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. But if we actually pay attention, it kind of doesn't. It kind of breathe, and then suddenly it'll kind of like stop, start, or suddenly every now and then you just kind of have like a deeper breath. And they're like, why? It's not even. Now, it's related to a number of things, in particular, say, body, physical posture, and also state of mind. Suddenly think of some particular thing, it'll influence your breath. But by training the breath, we can really start to train it to, first of all, be really smooth and even. Very smooth, very even. And this, I think, is also related to the length of the breath. So if you think for a moment back to these first types, like if we think of this first type of breath as kind of like panting, gasping breathing, like when we're exercising, it's very short, right? Right? And also if you see, for example, in states of fear or panic, what happens? Breath gets really short and sharp, right? Pulse rate goes up, breathing increases, panic response, adrenaline kicks in. This is not conducive to a calm state of mind. And the further we go down into it, if we want to get to this one, it's not just that the breath is smoother, but it also becomes longer. It also becomes longer. So this is this long, slow breath. Now, the text itself mentions these two types, kind of smoothness, smooth meaning not coarse, and of course even, and extended duration. Now, I'll add another point as well that I think is also relevant, is the depth of the breath. Exercising and panting will be deep, even though it's short and coarse, because we're really trying to bring in huge amounts of oxygen. But if the breath is not deep, it tends to come up higher in the body, up into the chest area. And as we're going to see a bit later, what we want to do is actually bring it down lower and have what's known as diaphragmatic breathing. But we'll get to that in a second. So depth as well. Smooth and even. Long, slow, deep breath. This is the kind that's going to bring about the subtle respiration. The circumstance supports the spirits abiding in peacefulness and stability. So in other words, this leads to a peaceful and stable state of mind. One feels pleased and content. These are the marks of subtle respiration. So in Chinese, xi, that's what we're looking at. It gives a little brief description of the effects of each breath type. And the key point is just simply that the first three are not enough. They're not the states that we want for meditation, right? Scattered, stuck, weary. But for the last one, what do we get? We get meditation. Okay, the Xi breathing is what leads us to meditation. Okay, so it's talking about these other types and what we need to do to deal with it. Now, there's a really important, this last little comment here, so I'm just looking at our time, last little comment, I think super important. If the breath isn't in that right space, what do we do? What's our adjustment technique? If one wishes to correct them, then one should rely on three techniques. First, stable the mind by anchoring it below, and then the translators added at the navel. So those little square brackets is when the translators just put a comment. And this, yes, that little addition, 3 words by the translator, are, according to tradition, what is meant here. Second, relax and release the body. And third, visualize the breath penetrating through all the pores. So this is like the pores of the skin, right? Our skin does breathe, remember that. going forth and coming in without any obstacles, obstructions whatsoever. So I want to focus on that first one first. The position, the point at which we observe the breath will make a difference. And many texts, I think particularly in Theravada traditions, we get more emphasis on mindfulness of the breath at the nostrils, or they often say between the top lip and the nose. So this area here. And you can feel it. Okay, don't breathe like that normally, but you can feel the contact, the air coming into the body, contacts here, it's sensitive, and we can feel the breath there. It is a good point to observe the breath because you literally have contact between the wind and the body. Okay. You'll feel it more so if there's a greater temperature difference between the outside air and your body. If it's very cold, of course, you feel really sharp coldness. When it starts to get warmer, you don't feel it so much, but there is still a kind of a contact of the movement. But what that tends to do is it tends to have the breath up higher, up into the top chest, and it makes it shorter, right? Your lung capacity is really quite big. Normally, if we don't need it, we only breathe with shallow breathing up the top part of the body. But instead we're going to anchor it low down. It says at the navel. Now there are some kind of finer points. A more common description is 2 or 3. Let me just flip on over here and go on to the... oh, sorry, I didn't flip the camera. I thought I was looking at the text. 2 or 3 finger spaces below your belly button. That point there. Now that point in Chinese is known as the dantian. That term itself comes from Taoist tradition. It's actually the field of the elixir. So I won't go into all the Taoist stuff, but that point, your dantian, below the belly button. Sometimes it's also called the qi hai, which is literally the ocean of qi, the ocean of this. And here it's kind of this like qi energy. So by locating it there and putting the focus there on the rise and fall of the lower abdomen, it makes the breath longer because when you observe the rise and fall of the abdomen, your breathing is deeper and you're doing diaphragmatic breathing, right? Which is where you're moving. I don't know if you probably can't really see that. I might have to, let me just lower the camera right down, shall I? I don't know if it's going to be low enough. Right? Diaphragm, bottom of your rib cage, and it's right under there, yeah? And breathing is when that goes down. When that goes down, it creates a vacuum and the air comes in, right? Simple dynamics of air. So you're moving that muscle down. When you want to exhale, that diaphragm goes up, it contracts the space, and it forces the air out. So diaphragmatic breathing is not breathing from like feeling it up here or just like feeling it at your nostril, but it is consciously moving the diaphragm, and it makes for a much deeper breath, and that's when you'll feel it down here in your lower abdomen. Okay, that's the basic point. Let me just pop that back up. So this is the first one. Now there are these other techniques. Second point is important to just relax the body. Make sure your body is not stiff. You want to have that nice upright body, but you need to be relaxed. And then last one, this idea of visualizing the breath penetrating through all the pores. Now there are lots of different types of visualization practices. This one is sort of like the breath coming in from not just your nose, but like all the air around your body going into your body, into this point, and then back out from that point. Okay, there are some other different techniques. It's not too far to go from these techniques to other ones, such as, you know, visualizing, say, energy, like coming from above through the crown and down through the energy channels and then back out through those channels. The text isn't talking about those, but if you are used to using techniques like that, they can have quite a similar result. Okay, so I'm going to put all these into the same basic category. What we are doing is we are putting our focal point for the breath lower, and we're relaxing the body, and we can use some kind of visualization as though we're visualizing this air / energy coming from externally into the body to that key point and then back out with the exhalation. If one makes one's mind subtle, one causes the breath to become very fine. If the breath becomes regulated, then these manifold disorders, so this kind of coarseness, roughness, distorted states do not arise, and one's mind easily enters meditative absorption. Okay, now that's basically it there for regulation of the mind. Yeah. So I'm just going to play around with a couple of windows here. Okay. So what we need to do now, we need to have a little brief stretch. I do note we've got a couple of comments though, so I'll just kind of mention those. I see we've got another couple of people joining us here. We've got Chantel. Nice to see you there, Chantel. And we've got Anisha Devi Kamayoka, and welcome along. Maybe you're new to the group. Welcome. Good morning. And we've got a comment from Mika. Sometimes I sit with jeans on. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, we just wear jeans normally. Of course, the thing with the tightness around your pants, if you're sitting, I mean, it's more of an issue if you're sitting cross-legged. If you're just sitting on a chair with your feet down, it's really not an issue because your knees are at 90 degrees. They're not at like a much tighter acute angle, which is going to cause that pain. So then it's not really an issue. Mika also asks, what's the deal with eyeglasses? I never found them distracting. Yeah, I kind of don't either, just simply because if you wear glasses, you're just used to having them on all the time. But I think they do have like a really slight effect, you know. Like if you wear glasses long enough, you know how you get these little like grooves on the side of your nose? I'd still think in principle, if we're talking about like, you know, we're talking about down to the 1%, you know, the 1% adjustments, these tiny, tiny little micro details, that must have some effect. That must have some effect. And another one, now this is a bit more of a kind of a subtle point, not everyone will buy into it, but particularly if you've got metallic frames, I wonder if it does cause some kind of, you know, any of these things have some kind of field about it. Does it have an effect? I don't know. I think you probably have to just do some long-term practice with it. But I think it's best to be really just unabstracted by all those kinds of things, and just let the body be very kind of natural, shall we say. Okay, so what did I say? Time to do some stretches. We've been sitting for over 40 minutes already. Let's do some brief stretches and then we can have a sitting session. Okay, time to change the camera. Oh, I need to push this one down. Okay, so make sure you've got your nice space where you can stretch out. We're just going to do our usual ones, hitting the 3 core joints, ankles, knees, hips, and then some for the spine and the neck, and then a couple for the chest and to open up the chest. So let's just go through it. Now I'm going to talk a little bit less today. We've talked about these before. So that way, rather than me talking, we can put more focus on, remember, when we stretch a body part, that's where we're going to put our mental attention and focus. Okay. So right ankle, other way, change the left ankle, other way, okay, feet together, hands on knees, then squat down, up, stretching back the legs, down. You can probably hear those popping sounds of my knees. And down, and back, and then we can do little circles with the knees. back the other way. Okay, coming up. Hands on the hips, feet slightly apart to do the waist. Okay, and then just circles at your waist. Make sure I don't hit the back wall there. Put your focus into the tops of the hips and the waist. And back the other way. Okay, let's give your legs a shake out. Nice and relaxed. Okay, now to the spine. So just going to come out on the side so I've got a bit more ceiling space. Okay, hands together, inhaling, stretching up, opening up the chest, breathing in, and then exhaling down, legs straight as much as possible, hands down to the ground if you can. Breathing in. Exhaling down. Breathing in. And relax. Okay. For the head and neck, we're just going to stretch up and down with the neck. So relax your shoulders, stretching up and down, up and down, up and down. Center, left and right. Okay, well that feels a bit more comfortable. Okay, now let's take a seat. I hope you've got your sitting position all sorted out. I should be able to then change back to a different other camera. I hope this has got a good angle. Okay, take your seat there. Now we talked last week about the different postures, so I'm not going to go through that in detail again. But from the easy posture, one foot in front, one in behind, to the half lotus, one tucked in and the other foot up on the other ankle, or you can do the full lotus with both feet up on top. That's up to you. So that's the first point of our posture. Make sure your clothes are nice and comfy as well. Second point of the posture is the position of the hips, so and kind of your lower back. So the key point, as mentioned last week, is that if your knees are too high, if your knees are higher than your hips here, what will happen is your back will slouch, right? And that's not what we want. So as much as you can, if you can have your knees down on the floor or a mat or a cushion or a towel, and then you might want to have like a little cushion like I've got under your buttocks, and then your hips can roll forward and then your back's up straight. So that's the second point. Third point is position of your hands. Now the classic is this kind of meditation mudra. I often sit with my hands on my knees, to be honest. Usually it's considered better here. We'll bring about better concentration. I'm just a bit lazy. Fourth point is then your chest open and full, which means you're not slouching your shoulders, okay? Don't slouch forward like that. Or if you have your hands here, yeah, it is good to have them, that point just kind of on your lower abdomen there. If you put them down on the ground like this, what will tend to happen is your shoulders will slouch again, right? It will kind of constrict your chest, as opposed to here, your chest can be slightly more open. So that's the fourth point. Fifth point, head and neck up straight. Make sure your head is not back or dipped forward. Then your mouth closed, tongue on the top palate. And now our text says to have your eyes closed, but if you find that makes you drowsy, you can have them slightly open with your gaze lowered down. Okay, so you're not, your eyes open, but you're not like looking around like, what's that? What's that? It's the worst thing. And like big retreats and lots of people, there's almost always one person. If everyone else is meditating, there's always one person sitting there like this. What are they doing? What are they doing? Like, I'm meditating, so don't be distracted. Okay, then we can take a couple of these deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth if you like. Again, and as we're taking these deep full breaths, you might want to make some micro adjustments to your posture. Might find, oh, just a little, all right? Just some little tiny adjustments to your posture, and that's fine. That's quite natural at first, right? You don't want to be doing that through your whole session. And once you've done that, then let us begin. We're going to begin our session. First, we might want to double check our posture and making sure not just the correct posture, but also relaxed state. Remember, it's going to be upright and alert, but also relaxed. And then our breath. And then our breath. And observe the quality of our breath. And what we can do is we can observe the breath down here. If we can feel that rise and fall of the abdomen. If you can't, that's okay. You can just feel the rise and fall of the breath at your chest, or just your breath as a whole for this session. Okay. So now that you're comfortable, we'll begin. Upright posture, but relaxed. Make any final adjustments to your posture if you need it. And then we can begin to observe the breath. See which of these four types of breath we are presently in. Windy breath, uneven breath, normal breath, or subtle respiration. And while we want to bring about that subtle respiration, this qualities of very subtle, even, fine, and also longer breath, a longer duration. It's important that we don't force that. We're not going to try to force a long, subtle breath. No, it's got to be quite natural and sustainable. Can help to bring this about by putting our focus on the breath in the lower abdomen, just below the belly button, the rise and the fall. double check your posture. And just very simply go through each of the 7 points, making sure that posture is correct. The body is also relaxed and comfortable. In order to bring about subtle respiration, you can put your point of concentration on the breath, the lower abdomen, rise and fall with each inhalation and exhalation. Your body's relaxed. And if you want to, you can try that visualization of all this breath energy coming in through the whole body. When you breathe in, coming from the whole body into that point of concentration. With the inhalation, and then with the exhalation, it's going out through all the pores of the body. With the visualization, you do that if it helps you. If you find it's too complicated or distracts you, then just leave it. Slowly bring about that state of breathing. It's very long and even and fine. As the text says, it's kind of like the breathing is there, but kind of like it's not. It's very subtle, very even. So our mind also needs to be very calm, undistracted, so as to give good attention to that kind of breathing. Double check your posture. You may even find as your breath becomes calmer and your mind becomes clearer that your posture naturally becomes better and also more comfortable. Good posture, calm breathing and clear mind mutually support one another. Aware of the quality of your breath. And gently but persistently let your breath enter into that very even, calm, long and deep form of subtle respiration. Aided by fixing your mind, lower abdomen, and relaxing the body, correct posture, and also you can add the visualization of the pores of the skin, bringing in the air energy all around into the body with the breath, and then exhaling it also outwards. mind becomes more focused and calm, along with your breath, your body. And also note that disturbances in the mind come from those sensory desires and also the 5 hindrances that we looked at several weeks ago. Now, calmer and clearer state of mind enables us to see these in greater clarity. So we can develop a kind of positive feedback loop. More relaxed the body, more subtle the breath, clearer the mind, the more easily we can see the things that distract from and disturb our concentration and do something about them, further inducing an even deeper state of calm, clarity, calm and insight. Take a nice deep full breath in. Exhale all the way out. Bring your attention back to your body as a whole. Just start to gently rock the body left and right, moving slowly from calm, passive physical state, active state. You can then sit upright, stretch back, and exhale forward, bending at the waist, and up, and forward. And up, stretching the neck, rolling the shoulders. And then warm up the palms of the hands. Covering over the eyes, massaging around the eyes, forehead, temples, face as a whole. To the ears, down to the earlobes. And up the palms again. The neck, shoulders and arms. Chest down to the abdomen and the lower back. Okay. From now I should be feeling nice and comfortable. I know I am. I feel great. Okay. Just going to move that forward again and then we can finish off with some Q&A time. Oh, sorry, I should really say, you should just stretch and massage out the legs. In particular, if you get any numbness or discomfort in your legs, ankles. I normally don't myself, so I kind of forget about this, but I should still go through it. Okay. Come forward. Just adjust the camera once again. Okay. Okay, it's 10:15. We've got maybe 14 minutes left. So, maybe time. Q&A, comments, questions. Now, just while you're thinking of those and before you write them in, I hope you can already start to see at this point how, now that we're working with this, adjusting of 5 things, sleep and food are kind of general lifestyle issues. We're not eating during the meditation, or hopefully we're not sleeping during the meditation. But these other 3, body, breath, and mind, I hope you can start to see from today's session how they interact with one another. And that's a really key part of the practice. As I mentioned, I think last week, some people kind of take an attitude, ultimately, when Buddhism is talking about meditation, it is a mental state. All the classic descriptions of meditation is applied thought, sustained thought, joy, happiness, one-pointedness of mind. All of these are mental qualities. And, the later traditions, when we talk about samadhi, for example, as a mental factor, or concentration as a kind of a mental state. It's a mental state, it's not a physical state. Though some traditions do have the idea that there's what's known as prasarabdhi, which is this kind of, as often the translations of it aren't particularly good. I think they get translated by philologists who look at the words but don't necessarily have that much experience with meditation. But it gets rendered into something like physical pliancy and mental pliancy. In Chinese, it's usually translated as Qing An. Qing means light, An means kind of peaceful, and it is that state. So you get this kind of physical feeling of comfort. You're sitting and you just feel very comfortable, very relaxed. And if you also notice, particularly if you do a longer retreat, your body will start to become more flexible. Now this is a kind of a curious thing. Basically it's because the body's relaxing and these kind of daily little micro tensions that build up in the body are all being released and the body starts to become more and more relaxed. It's a very interesting thing. But in addition to the physical pliancy, there's also a kind of what's called a mental pliancy. So some traditions, I believe the Theravada tradition makes a distinction between these two. But then in terms of the physical side of meditation, it's really only this physical pliancy that is an element of meditation. But I think what you should be able to see is, the posture really affects your breathing and your state of mind. We can't just sort of say, meditation is just mental, therefore it doesn't matter what you do with your posture. It's not that simple. Ultimately, some really core underpinning ideas of Buddhism are the ideas of dependent origination. Things influence and connect with one another. And this kind of body, mind, breath connection is certainly one of those. So just mentioning that state there of that kind of mental pliancy, the mind, I kind of imagine it like normally, I think going back to that metaphor of like the clay for the potter, right? So the potter sits down at this potter wheel and he wants to make a vase, for example. So you get the clay and you put it there. Now, you've got to get that clay kind of nice and soft enough that you can shape it without it fracturing and breaking, but not too much, not too soft or too wet that it just becomes this like soggy lump. It just like won't shape. You shape it up and it just collapses because it's just a soggy mess, right? And so the mind is a lot like that. It's kind of normal state. It kind of tends to break up into individual chunks, like individual thoughts, emotions. And they kind of jump from one to another. But when we're constantly applying the mind to the breath and sustaining it there, those kind of bigger chunks kind of break down, and we get a kind of real moment by moment ability to apply the mind to whatever object we want to apply it to. So in our case, it's the breath mainly, but also we kind of sometimes alternating, going back, checking the body, and coming back to the breath, checking the breath. And so we've kind of got this process where we start to create a kind of like a positive feedback loop. And you'll also see this again further on. I noticed for myself, even just sitting, we only sat there for maybe 20 minutes, maybe a bit longer. I find myself about halfway through, I just kind of want to adjust my posture. I feel that my back wants to be even straighter, my chest even more upright and full. Kind of like, oh, my posture gets better. And I can even see this for myself if I go through like a really long retreat, might even be a couple of days into it, I'll kind of hit another point where those kinds of physical tensions have dropped off to a further degree. And so you kind of see the body naturally wants to be in a good posture, healthy, happy posture. And the breath also kind of naturally wants to go into this very deep and even calm state of mind. And likewise, the mind also will kind of naturally fall into that once we let all those other obstacles kind of break away. Okay. Once those things start to break away. Okay, no questions coming through as yet. Are you all just such a happy, calm and peaceful state that you don't have anything to say? I'm not sure. Hope so, that would be very nice. If you do have any thoughts, just drop them in. We've still got a couple of minutes left where we can talk about some different matters. Or if you just want to ask any questions about anything at all, please feel free to throw them in. We have a bit of discussion, a bit of communication. It's always nice. Okay. So, just, this is also getting back to another reason, partly why I do the stretches. I mean, one simple reason is just sitting still on a seat for an hour and a half really isn't that good for us. We just want to get up and move around and then sit back down. But again, to just like formally take some time, stretch the body, stretch out some of those tensions, then starts to kick off this kind of positive feedback loop. Okay, we've got a question here from Margot. How to develop meditation practice as a daily habit? Yeah, this is a very good question. This is one of the hardest things to do. I think going from like no meditation practice to having one is harder than from going from having one to kind of then stepping it up. I think the first thing you have to do is work out two things, time and place. First thing, you need to find when you have time regularly, and I would try to recommend daily. When do you have time? What is the best time? Now it's very easy to kind of say, oh, wake up half an hour earlier. Yeah, easier said than done. You wake up half an hour earlier means you're getting half an hour less sleep, right? So that's going to have a kind of an effect there. Now, when it comes to that time, ideally it's got to be, really the best times would be dawn, just before the sun's come up, and in the evening just as the sun's going down. Though what will usually be the case is, around when the sun's going down, so around here at the moment it's like 6:30, but it's noisy because there's some people are like coming home from work and stuff like that. Early in the morning is better, at least where I live, because it's quieter. Okay, but you might find that there's some other time of the day when it is a bit better. Maybe late at night before you go to bed is another good time. Also tends to be in general a little bit quieter. Of course, at that time you might feel a bit more tired. But then you need to make sure you need to work that into your schedule. And so you need to, a good way is like, most of us now, we have like, use something like Google Calendar. Put it on your calendar and put a little alarm reminder there to remind you so that you don't go, oh, I'm supposed to meditate, but I also want to go to bed because I've got to get up early, and then our time gets constricted. Schedule it in. Okay. And then the second one is the place. Make sure you've got a good place for it. Ideally, if we had a little space where we didn't do anything else, would be good. And it doesn't take much. I mean, I'm sitting here, it's not even like a square meter. If I kind of did it maybe facing a wall, so like this wall over here, for example, I could maybe put like an image of the Buddha there or something like that. You don't have to have like a whole kind of traditional like table with incense and candles and water offerings and flowers. I mean, if you can, it's nice, but you don't have to do all that, right? But just one little space, hopefully where you're not going to see all those other things that kind of distract you, because those other things will distract you, and then where you're not going to get in the way of the other people that you live with, assuming that you live with anyone else. And then just do it day after day. And you just remind yourself, today I just need to do my practice, just today, right? I can't do tomorrow's practice today, and I can't do yesterday's practice today, so I don't need to worry about what I did yesterday, and I don't need to worry about tomorrow, but I do need to make sure that I do my practice today. Okay, Tina's got a question. Well, not a question, letting go questions also. Okay, so I'm guessing that you're meaning after that little sitting session, questions are just kind of gone from your mind. Okay, well, that's not too bad. That's not too bad either. Question from Kun Jing. Suggestions on how to better combine what we learn in the text with our meditation practice. Okay, yeah, I think for myself, like a good combination is kind of what I'm trying to do here. Read the text a little bit and then go and do the meditation practice. And at first you're kind of following the text is good, but what you will find over time is that you know, and I'll be honest when it comes to say this text. So I've studied this text, I've studied this text back with Venerable Huizhi when I was in Buddhist college. I've taught this text as like a basic syllabus for quite a few years to others. But I found over time there are certain bits that I just kind of, I skip over. I don't find that they're that critical. And then there might be some other bits that I kind of want to supplement from other sources. So it's also good to kind of have maybe a couple of core texts that teach a basically similar practice. And you can alternate reading a bit of those with the practice. And you'll soon find out for yourself which bits are kind of the critical bits. You still need to apply them though, of course, to then try to understand. So between studying the text and this theory to then doing it, finding out what that's like in practice, and then deepening our understanding of what the text is saying, we need to kind of balance between those two. So for example, this text mainly focuses on using the breath. You might want to go check out the other Tiantai text called the Six Gates to the Sublime, Liao Miao Men. That gives more specific details on using the breath through 6 kind of steps. The 6 are basically 3 that are calm, from calming the mind, and then another 3 which are the basic practice of insight or contemplation. And that text and this text work really, really well together. Right? So maybe if you're going through this afterwards, maybe we can do that actually for the next little course. We can maybe go through that, and you'll study it. Then by studying it just before you meditate, those things are in your mind, right? So you've got the theory in your mind while you're doing the practice, rather than you've just been watching TV and then you go and sit down like, oh, late at night watching TV and I want to go to bed, let me meditate, and you sit down and meditate, and what's in your head? Whatever TV or movie or news or whatever that you've been watching. Okay. Got another comment there from Hanuman Rivera. TY, thank you. I'm guessing that's meaning. You're welcome. Hope you have enjoyed the class today. Time now is 10:30. So that's basically our class time for today. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be signing off in a second. And of course, the video is always up here on site. You can always come back and check it out a bit later as well. And hopefully, as time permits and circumstances permit, we'll also be putting up some other just different items of content here and there, mainly pre-recorded stuff as well. Okay, comment from Margo, thanks for a nice answer. See you next week. Yeah, thank you. Hope that helps, and I'll see you next week too. Okay, everyone, signing out. Bye-bye.